Happy New Year, everyone. As we kick off 2025, let's take a moment to reflect on the standout cards of 2024. Whether you're a casual player or a hardcore competitor, this video will highlight the best cards of 2024 across all the sets and classes. Stick around and I'll also reveal the biggest winners and losers and give you some crafting recommendations for the year ahead. So let's dive right in. Released in March, Whizbang's Workshop kicked off a 4-set meta with a bang. While some classes thrived, others were left scrambling for relevance. Let's break it down by class. First of all, Death Knight, Druid, Demon Hunter, and Hunter really got little support. And Mage actually only received Watercolor Artist, which at the time wasn't even that strong of an inclusion. However, Paladin was the biggest winner of the expansion, getting Painter's Virtue, Tigress Plushie, Toy Captain Terran. Hand of Paladin became one of the best decks in the game, had to get nerfed, and even to this day is still a tier 1, tier 2 deck throughout its lifetime. Priest received Timewinder Zarimi, which proved pivotal in forming that archetype. Rogue received a number of bombs that ultimately ended up getting it nerfed over the course of the year, but it bears mentioning that this class saw a lot of success with Sonya Water Dancer, Bargain Bin Buccaneer, Dubious Purchase, and Sandbox Scoundrel. All of those cards will be relevant in the meta at some point, and Sonya and Scoundrel, they got their nerfs just recently, so those cards were very, very impactful. Shaman was the other big winner. It got Murloc Grofin, Pop-Up Book, Hagatha, and Shutterblock. And while Hagatha and Shutterblock maybe aren't in every Shaman deck made, Murloc Grofin and Pop-Up Book are very, very relevant. And even though they seem inconspicuous, they're not very powerful, they're one-drops, they do a lot for a lot of archetypes and really have been pivotal to the success of that. So Shaman really got some good early game cards from Whizbangs. Warlock, it got Wheel of Death, which I think in the right meta, this card can still be meaningful, but Warlock really didn't get enough support as you'll see in the later expansions. Warrior really only got Inventor Boom, but that is pretty significant because of what we're going to talk about next, which is Ziliax. And only 2 neutrals really saw popular play. I'm going to go ahead and share Scarab Keychain because it's a great one-drop that can smoothen your curve. But really, the biggest card of the entire year, really, has been Ziliax. Simply the most impactful legendary in the game since its release, and probably best card ever made, right? Now it's on its 5th nerf, and I think if it stays in the meta, or in the standard format, then it will dominate the meta for the year to come. It warps deck building, and it hinders a lot of creative ideas from existing. I think it's in the best interest of Blizzard to rotate the card out early, to ban it for the rest of the year, and just rotate it out of standard. Perils in Paradise came in the summer, and it brought a new mechanic called the Tourist Mechanic, and much needed support for some of the classes that were neglected from Whizbang's Workshop. Death Knight was one of those biggest winners, getting Brittlebone Buccaneer, Corpsicle, Dreadhound Handler, Buttons, and Horizon's Edge. All of these cards go great with the flavor and context of what Death Knight wants to do. Put corpses and then use corpses. Buccaneer, so good at the Death Rattle recursion effects. Corpsicle, a great corpse bender. Dreadhound Handler, giving you tempo and bodies and resilience. Buttons, drawing a bunch of fun spells. And then Horizon's Edge, which you can utilize a lot in one turn because of all the minions that you're sacrificing. This package is very in line with the class's identity, and I think all of those cards vie for spots in many of the Death Knight decks. Demon Hunter saw a brief space of power when it had Patches, the Unnerved Sigil Skydiving, and Dangerous Cliffside, plus all the pirate cards, but other archetypes just didn't really exist, and I think at some point people get bored of playing a super aggressive deck like Pirate Demon Hunter. Druid, on the other hand, continued its decade of dominance in the game by getting access to yet another ramp card in New Heights, and also a way to bring Ziliax with Hydration Station, and another way to play all your early game spells in ramp again with Mista Vista. Oh, and by the way, Mista Vista gave him access to Mage cards as well, so great way to go Blizzard, way to buff up Druid. Hunter or Warlock, they didn't really get anything worth mentioning in the set, so I won't talk about that. Mage was another big winner. Mage took a big buff, likely the biggest winner of the set, getting the 2 best tourists, getting Tsunami, and of course getting Seabreeze Chalice, right? So you get Rayla to play Paladin cards, you get Skyla to play Rogue cards, Skyla being way too strong of a tourist mechanic, and Battlecry. You got Tsunami, the buff Tsunami, and now nerf Tsunami. You had the Seabreeze Challenge, which was nerfed now. Mage was really looking great for a good portion of the meta, and I'll be quite frank, it had the most fun decks. Paladin continued its growth with Sandcastle and Sunsapper Linessa, which helped an existing archetype in hand with Paladin, but it also introduced the new OTK Paladin list, or those Sunsapper Linessa based decks. Priest received Brave Masseuse, which helped out DH more than I think it helped out Priest, but the card is good and it was worth mentioning. Rogue received Old Manager and Metal Detector, which are 2 coin generators, good with Wishing Well, but they're also good in other classes, and for Rogue, of course. And so they're very good if you're using Mage or Paladin. Shaman continued to get buffed and not nerfed, right? You got Malted Magma, Carefree Cookie, and Razzle Dazzler. Eventually 2 of those cards would get nerfed, but Shaman just kind of dodges all of the hate from Blizzard. Warrior only received Ham the Hungry, which was more than enough because the tourists gave him access to the Druid Ramp, they gave him access to Hydration Station, giving the best control deck in the game yet another way to bring back the best win con in the game, which is Iliax. So, Warrior had a nice little heyday in the middle of Perils in Paradise. And there were a ton of reliable neutrals that were introduced to set. We had Gorgonzormu, we had Grifta, we have Incendius, we have Marin the Manager, and Dunger. All 5 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, all 5 of these were very impactful legendaries in the game and are still played right now. Lastly, we come to the Great Dark Beyond. For all intents and purposes, the Great Dark Beyond has been the weakest in power level of all the expansions this year. It comes out in the 6-set meta, which is historically a really evolved meta, and there's a lot of things going on. The problem with the set is that while Demon Hunter, Rogue, and Paladin didn't really get strong cards, the other cards for other classes aren't strong enough to overtake the stranglehold that those classes have on the standard meta. So, there's just not enough power creep. The cards were just too weak across the board. Death Knight, it received Airlock Breach, which is a really strong card, great card to have. Demon Hunter, it received a cool archetype in Draenei, which can't compete with any deck that exists in the game because of the existence of Ziliax. Druid didn't receive any new tools, but it did get Stargrazer and Arcanite Revelation, which I think are both worth mentioning, especially with Dungar Druid. Hunter, it received XR Nile and Rangari Scout, which I think are going to be core to more control lists later in the future, and those are great cards. Mage, it received an entire tier 1 archetype with Elemental Mage and all the supporting cards. Paladin, it received nothing but Librams, but those Librams are 1 key card away from being very strong, so I think Librams will be very strong in the future. Priest, it only received Orbital Halo, but nothing else that was impactful. Rogue received nothing, but it had so much strong stuff already that it kind of just is on the top of the meta all the time. It did get Quasar Rogue, but we saw that deck leave soon after it was released. Shaman, for some reason, they decided, hey, let's just give it another archetype to play in the class, and it got Asteroid Shaman. Asteroid Shaman, I think all those cards are strong, and it's a very interesting archetype, and hopefully it has future development as well. Warlock received nothing yet again, and Warrior, although it was given Hostile Invader, it didn't really get enough, and the class now suffers, surprisingly. There weren't many impactful neutrals this time around, because the overpower level is low, but I think Ceaseless Expanse, Kill Jaden, and Nexus Prince Shafar are all great cards that will likely find meta play in the future. In terms of non-legendary neutrals, I think Ethereal Oracle and Arcanite Defense Crystal were the best ones. And that wraps up the best cards of 2024. Which cards stood out to you the most? Are there any cards that you think that I missed? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know which ones you're planning to craft for 2025. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you won't miss my next video. See you next time, and here's to an amazing year ahead.